Specifically in my Asian American and Asian Pacific Islander affinity group, I learned a lot about previous social justice movements like the Yellow Power movement and civil rights groups like the Red Guard Party. And learning about these historically significant civil rights events and groups really helped me understand the motivation behind other equal rights movements for the AAPI community today.
So something new that I learned during my time at SDLC is probably the cycle of oppression. The fact that is how oppression works and that's what it's called. I very much was intrigued to learn how it starts with fear of the unknown and how it can end with hatred of oneself, just because you think that you don't fit into what society deems as normal or appropriate, so you just feel complete hatred for yourself because you feel like you're not right because society automatically sees you that way.
Something new that I learned is that if someone is gender fluid, the gender varies over time. So a gender fluid person could identify as male one day and identify as non-binary the next day.
Something new that I learned at SODC was basically breaking down the cycle of oppression, how it can start off by just having not enough knowledge about a group of people, which can lead to having a fear of difference, or basically stereotypes, and it goes on to prejudice, then discrimination, and can go up to that institutional oppression and internalized oppression. And there was this question that was asked, which I feel like was very important and key, which was, what is the cycle of oppression you're living in, and when are you going to step out of it and stop it?
The keynote speaker, Lila June, who is a member of the Dene, or I guess mistakenly known as the Navajo tribe, talked about the importance of culture preservation, especially for Indigenous peoples. She not only sang a very, very powerful song and performed an equally powerful original poem to convey her message, but she also responded to questions that SDLC student attendees asked, which made her presentation even more meaningful.
What resonated with me the most was our keynote speaker, Layla, who's an Indigenous lady, and basically how I've learned more about Indigenous people there for only an hour of just hearing her speak than I've ever learned in my entire school experience. It really shows how much this country puts white guilt and sugarcoats everything that actually happened. And I thought it was really interesting how they really truly live to honor nature by calling the different groups of animals nations and how much they have respect for each other. Also, because they don't call this land America, they call it Total Island because it was something that was taken away from them, and why would they want to use that different type of name? And also how these different types of stereotypes and prejudice are built at such a young age when, like, I remember in first grade, I was always taught about Christopher Columbus, not the actual truth of the genocide that happened. So I thought that was really interesting.
What resonated with me the most during my time at SDLC was the atmosphere, just being surrounded by completely different people, but we all had the same purpose of being there. And I loved how everything was just so open and freeing. The atmosphere was just so calm and so open. No one rejected anyone else's ideas, even if they disagreed with them slightly. It was just very open and anyone could be heard and listened to.
Something that really stood out to me is that so many people struggle to feel comfortable in their own bodies, and that I'm never alone when I feel this, like a bunch of people feel this.
Well, my affinity group sessions provided a very safe environment where people who share certain identifiers, specifically ethnicity or in some cases sexuality or gender orientation, people can come together to build a community, fellowship, and empower each other. And these affinity groups were designed to increase our awareness about talking about our own identities as a part of this group, as a part of our school communities, and in other social contexts.
The affinity groups were really cool because everyone around me shared something in common with me, whether it was my race, gender, sexuality, religion, etc. Because of this, I wasn't afraid to be someone that I wasn't, because I knew that the people around me were exactly like me.
I was in the multiracial affinity group, and that was my first time being in a multiracial affinity group, because prior to this I would only go to the Black or African American affinity groups. And I just absolutely loved the multiracial affinity group, because that is what I identify with the most, and I felt very much at home, at a different kind of home, because I did finally get to meet people who were similar like me and had similar experiences than I did. And we were all just able to relate to each other even though we didn't know each other at all.
So basically, I was in the Black and African American affinity group, and I feel like it was just so powerful to see that many Black people in a Zoom call. There was over 600, and just to feel like I'm with other people who look just like me, who are going through the same experiences as me with different private schools and stuff like that, that if, say, a microaggression happened to me, probably happened to another person in that Zoom call, that I could just talk to about it, and they would understand and really listen to what I was going through.
I think it would be really great if once a year at RHP we have a whole day of going to different affinity groups. Doing this will allow students to talk with each other in our school that share similar race, gender, sexuality, religion, and more, to help us feel comfortable in our own skins.
During one of the SDLC whole student event, the students and faculty actually participated in a silent movement activity, which I thought was very helpful in understanding who was attending the conference, and how diverse really all the attendees were. So in this activity, all the students and faculty turned off their cameras in the beginning. One of the event facilitators would read a certain cultural identifier in specific categories such as Asian American Pacific Islander or female, or in different identifiers, and people who identified in this way would turn on their cameras. And I thought this was very, very insightful because it challenged a lot of my own implicit biases on what certain people, I guess, looked like. And I reflected very deeply on the significance of DEI work.
In terms of initiatives for our school, I would like our school to take more forms of prejudice into account, even if some of them seem minor or not that harmful. It's just people are hurt by different things. And I learned that significantly during my time at SDLC. So as an initiative, I would like the school to realize that there are many ways that people are hurt, even if they might not understand it. I would like the school to take more action at that.
Things I think we should implement in our school right now is making sure we have those tough conversations, even though it's going to be uncomfortable, but still having them because they need to be had, and not putting white people's uncomfortableness over minorities' experiences, and letting minorities or POCs really speak about what it's actually not like, and not having white people really interrupt and making it seem like, oh, I don't want to hear this, and just being shunned to minority experiences. Also by having infinity groups, because I feel like it's really important to have that safe space you can talk to your peers and your friends and really understand what they're truly going through on a whole nother level, so you can really respect each other more.
I plan to apply what I've learned from SDLC to our school community by continuing the discussions that we have, not just like uncomfortable, conversations with my own family about issues with equity and inclusion, but also with Advocates for Diversity, which is a club on campus, and encouraging my peers and the people that I associate with to have those similar or try to initiate some maybe awkward or difficult conversations with their own families.
Some things that SODC taught me that I would bring to my school is really having a whole new respect for others, even though if I don't even know them yet, because I don't really know like what others' experiences are and where they come from, and truly just having that like level of respect. Also by listening to other experiences without waiting to speak, because sometimes I have a tendency to just wait until I can speak instead of actually listening to what they're going through and really comprehend and reflect on that.
A way that I would apply SDLC to the community is probably doing some activities, using activities that I did at SDLC and just doing pretty much similar or the same things here at RHP and Ren.
I want to ask my teachers, specifically in history or humanities classes, to focus more on content that's focused on other perspectives and ask questions that maybe don't concentrate as much on how the colonizers think as opposed to those who are actually suffering.
I think that there should be a day once a year where we really go over diversity and being a leader. We should really implement it in our school. I think it's really important.
Something else I thought was really interesting and cool was how we had these family groups which were a bit over 30 people, which was really small, which I liked, and how basically I felt this really, like, even though it was small, just this really big sense of community, and how we reflected a lot on our experiences each day. Like each day we would get a quote from Marsha P. Johnson, because I was in the Marsha P. Johnson group, which was, for example, one of them was "No pride for some of us without liberation for all of us," and how we would go and we would speak about the quotes and everybody would just really listen to what others were saying and really let them speak and really like reflect on how I can change for the better.
SDLC was a really great experience, and I'm really happy that I got to share what I learned about diversity to all my peers. Thank you.